So, thanks and welcome to this webinar where we'll talk about how to do DevOps for SAP Integration Suite. One of the things that, it's obviously an important topic, otherwise you would probably not be here, and I guess that is what we will be covering here. And since we're at the top of the hour, we might as well get started. It's not going to be so much here in the beginning, but we will warm up and get started. Okay. So what we want to be talking about is the following. So why is DevOps interesting, and what is the challenges with it? We will cover what a new transport process could actually look like, and then we would look at how you can actually get started with this fairly easy. Yes. Good. So here. Okay. So one of the things that I often talk about is the fact that you need somehow to take action. It is obviously really nice to just see, okay, this is what a process could look like. This is how you would be dealing with such scenarios, but it is a completely different thing to actually build this and see it in action and try it out and see how it will affect the way you're working with your SAP integration. And yeah, as often said, the best time to plant a tree is now. The second best is tomorrow or 10 years ago. And obviously it's the same thing with integration. The more you're going to use your integration platform, the more you're going to add legacy into it. And the better processes you have right now, the better it will be, and the easier the maintenance is going to be in the future. So I do hope that you do have a couple of hours to spend on evaluating if this works, or at least if it does not work, then you have something else and you can say, okay, this was not the way forward, but we do have some other ways to deal with these things. And I do like this one, and this is, if you have a good process, it is a peace of mind for this. And yeah, when we're talking about this, there is, I think for the next one, there's a lot of things here, and you are going to spend significant amount of hours on your integration platform. So the more you can improve the operations around it, the better here in the beginning. So I just have a short survey here that I'll also be adding in about what is, why it is that you want to implement DevOps. Is it to make it easier for you to release the integration or improve the quality, be able to share knowledge in the team, or is it, to be able to test the processes in a better way? But when we talk about some of these things, one of the things is obviously DevOps, and people say there is a lot of resources, it is easy to get started. I'd say yes, there is a lot of resources, there's a lot of different ways and processes that you can use to work on such DevOps projects. And let's just keep here. So I think they really enjoy what you're up to. That it is about improving the quality of the work that you have. That is one of the highest scoring things. So that's good. Questions, comments, just put them into the chat and I'll try to go through those things. The Neuro created this really good blog series, contains a lot of good stuff about what he was doing during his journey, and it is a journey to cover all these different things. And if that is the way you want to go, it's good. There's a lot of lessons to learn in that. but there's also a lot of tools you would need to go through, and I think we will be covering these things. I think actually the next one. So when you say we want DevOps, everybody say you need Git. DevOps, Git. They kind of work together in most organizations, but I think in a CPI and Integration Suite world, it becomes really difficult. And I created this blog post that should probably get into the Q&A section or in the chat so everybody can see it here. So under the Q&A, you can see the link to this this blog post that where I'm trying to cover a lot of these things. And there's a lot of these things or challenges. So one is obviously where's the source of truth, is the Git or the Integration Suite, and you need to be working both of these simultaneously, and that's part of the things that makes it a little difficult to actually work in it. You should also consider what to commit, how to do branching, because a lot of times you would have the ability to run the full process, or if you're doing DevOps or normal Git Java development, you can run everything locally. But that's not really the case in a CPI world where you just have one tenant where you can run the code, and then you need to, yeah, it becomes a little muddy in that case. Yeah, and I would say it does require a lot of effort from you if you want to build these things, deliver these scenarios. So, yeah, check out some of these things if that is of interest. And yeah, I think also some of the knowledge you are going to transition in and out with developers from time to time, and that is a bit of a challenge as I see it. You will probably also see that you need quite a number of different tools. So you have your dev, QA, and production instance of CPI. You need some Git tool. You need a pipeline tool. So that could be Jenkins, or it could be Azure Actions that can run these scenarios. You need editor, a Git editor. You need ServiceNow. You probably will also be needing some monitoring tools at the end, because you need to monitor, and there's something built in, but a lot of times I would see that customers would be adding a lot of built-in logic into the iFlow, which makes them much more complicated to monitor and manage, etc. Yeah, you have CP Island, you have some code validation, you may be also using SAP Transport Management to some of these things, or coordinating with it, so it becomes really challenging with this setup. What I will show you now is the target, what you can actually achieve with this. This is about supporting the full development lifecycle. I should have made this a figure 8 like you normally have in a DevOps, but this is about focusing on giving you a development tool, giving you a testing tool, transport, document, and monitoring, all into one UI that just simplifies the way you're dealing with this. So this is some of the components we have, and I think we probably add more than 10 tools as a platform that you anyway would build and would be a part of this flow over here that will make it much more challenging to understand what's going on and who have built what scenarios. Actually, yes. So if we follow this diagram, I will just try to use that. We will not cover everything because there is a lot of things that you can go into depth with and understand what's going on, but we just want to cover it in the high level. If you have questions, put them into the Q&A. So we'll start with development, testing, QA, and transport, and then we'll see it in action at the end. Okay, so let's do it in the middle of it. So whenever we start working on something, a groovy script and XSLT, we would be working on this and making changes to an iFlow using this. And this is sometimes a little challenging because the way you would be developing if you don't have an external ID is maybe you're copying to Groovy ID, you mix and change, you upload a test case or some input data, and you run it, and then once you're done, you copy paste the code back into your CPI, you deploy it, and then it does not work because you're using some other libraries, etc. We wanted to make it integrated as a way of developing the full process. And since we also got a testing tool, we also wanted to give you a way to test these scenarios. So let me show you what this actually looks like. Oh, here. So here I have my iFlow cat customer. Custom 2 here. So here I have an iFlow. I don't really want to go into the CPI to see it, but we have everything here. Let me just see. There's a question here. Yes. We have here a get header, for instance. We can open here the Groovy ID here. We can see it is probably not the best iFlow that has been created here, but one of the cool things is we have here the ability to select some input data that we already created. I'll show you later how to create this. And now we actually can reuse one of our test cases we can have. So let me just modify some of the input payloads. We could obviously do it in code. And what we can now see is we can actually see that there is a difference, and this just makes the process of managing these things a lot easier, because you can see instantly what it is creating. And obviously if you had real scenarios, it would be much easier also. Cool. Once you have made some changes to it, live webinar, we would also run it, and what you'll do is you'll then say upload, and then you can now upload this back into the CPI system, and here you can then start reusing this artifact. And this is just, it works the same way for XSLT, and that just makes the life much easier for developers. So now the synchronization is finished, we can open the iFlow here. So we have a lot of direct links, making it easy to go back and forth. Unfortunately, the CPI sometimes takes a little longer to load. So if I find the iFlow here, I changed, set it as 2, we can see that this demo webinar was inserted in here. One of the other things is we can see with CPI Helper, we have access here, so we can open any iFlow, click any Groovy script, XSLT, click here, and then we are directed back into the FIGAF where we can edit this artifact. This is deployed as a version. We will just deploy it as a new version, and we will deploy it. So now the deployment is triggered, and the next thing we want to do is, if we go back to the slide, is to work out on testing and why that is important. Questions on the Groovy editor, just add them also. I'll try also to cover those. So the thing is with testing, I think we can agree on testing is quite important as a part of the development process. One of the challenges that I see with it is obviously you can quite easily create a Postman collection that can do testing, where you can send a number of messages in. But the challenge is these iFlow changes from time to time. You do make modifications and then just make it difficult to understand what is going on. So you need to be able to update the test cases, run them, and then it should be easy for developers to actually find the test cases that already exist. So, and one of the things I see it as a developer, I really like the ability to take some of the test cases that already exist, run them, and then I can actually see what is this iFlow actually doing, and thereby be able to find the place where I need to make some changes in. So yeah, it's about debugging, it's understanding, and then you can see how you can test. Okay, let's create a new test case. So there's 3 ways, I'll just show you one of them. So here we have the iFlow. We will put it into trace mode and we'll see the messages that have been processed. I will now just send a message into this system. And what we can now see is that it would hopefully pop up with a message here and an F logo here. What we can now do is we can create a new create a test case. We can put in some message expression about why we are doing this. What is it? This is to test purchase orders. This is to test something else that we need to look into. So we will create it. And now the FIGAF tool will fetch all of this trace data from this processing. And now it's done. So now we have 1 incoming messenger, 32 outgoing. That was all we needed to do to create a test case that we can run and see if everything is as expected. We can easily run it, where we will then again, so if we see here, we can then see that the message has been processed again. And if we look here, we can see under the headers that this is a message correlation ID. This is a FIGAF test case that's being processed here. So that just makes it a lot easier to check what's going on. If we look here at the testing results, there's a lot of different places in because the way we have structured the test cases, which makes the navigation a little difficult to get started, but once you have done it, you will see it's pretty powerful. We can see everything is successful, and that means we have a successful test case. We didn't do any changes, which is obviously nice. If there were any changes, we just select it, and there's one that says updated test cases here. So that's testing, and there's a lot more you can go into. There's mocking, there is a lot of more detailed things that you can go into with regards to testing. And yeah, 3 different ways to cover. You can also, if you have some input and output payloads, you can also create test cases in that way, and that is also a continuous way of being able to test these scenarios. Questions? Just put them into the Q&A. Good. Now the next part is the transport. This is about us moving the development to our productive system. And here we're using a term called tickets, and in a ticket you can create a transport. And the reason why we wanted 2 different objects was that you would have one Jira request, for instance, that you link it to, and then continuously you may figure out, okay, so there was a few issues and another couple of questions that we needed to do, and then you'll create a transport back to QA. But let's try to see what this actually looks like in action. So we can go here to the landscape. Here we can see all the iFlows in our system. And if we just go here and we get the package, so we can see here in our package we have this we can actually see this has a different state. It is in draft, but it is a different version that is deployed. So there's definitely something that's a bit off with this, which means we probably forgot to synchronize it back to FIGAF. So to synchronize, we have here the button. So if we make changes and share a version, FIGAF does not necessarily need to know the difference, but it can be updated with this. So now we should hopefully see that there's a new version being updated for this. So if we go back to our list here and refresh, we can now see that this is in 270. There is a difference in our QA, and this is our virtual QA where we are reusing a dev system also for QA. So here you can also go in and see what's the differences between our dev and our productive system. Are there something that is in production that is a different version than we have in our QA, and something like that is in draft in production? Probably not ideal, and this is a prime example of what you could actually see for such scenarios. Good. But we wanted to transport this, so I just select here, create a ticket. We can also select multiple. I will have a Jira number or ServiceNow number. It's not going to replace that, but it is just a way that in the FIGAF tool we have a placeholder for why we are making these changes. We can see the iFlow here. We can go in and we can look up the test cases that we have for this. So we just had one test case here. And we can then run the test case, and this is then, ideally you should run all the test cases whenever you're creating a transport, because then you know that all the test cases you have for this scenario is valid, so that whenever the next guy comes that needs to fix something, it's easy to understand what's going on and apply the fix. Okay, so yeah, here on the testing result we will at some point in time see the status of this, but let's not go into this. So we can open the transport. Here we can see the externalized properties that needs to be applied in this QA to landscape. One of the things we have done is we have replaced HANA Dev. In our landscape configuration, we can go in and create these kind of things, so we don't need to remember all of these host names. And this is really useful when you have transporting in a landscape and you have QA host names, you have all these host names, and you mix them up and you need to make sure that they are correct whenever you import it. With this, you don't really need to remember all of these. You can just see the proposal that it comes up and see if it is correct. If it's not, it's easy just to correct it and say, hey, I actually need a different values for these ones. And then you can continuously improve these services as you get along. Good. So let's just change this one, save it. And we can also see this one is automatically replaced because we are saying which one it should be using. Okay. As a developer, I think I'm fairly done now. I can send it to approval. So now I'm also an approver. Ideally, it should not be the same person that does this, but obviously you would have scenarios where it is required. We can go in, we can say, hey, I have this BPMN model. I want to see what the differences are. So we can see there was something about here where a demo value was changed. So this makes it really easy to see where there's a difference between an iFlow. We can also see it in different ways, and we can see it in diff mode, where you can see the code. But this is not really good for seeing changes in the BPMN model, and that's why the graph makes the process easy, and we can see the last change we made here is also a part of it. And there's also message mappings, there's configurations that you can see what's going on and why something has been changed. Good. As an approver, I'll just say approve. Good. Put in whatever link to some tickets you would have for it, and then we can import it. You can also, import it via API and decide who needs to import it. But one of the key aspects of this is that once it's being imported, it will also apply this configuration. So no more after the fact go in and apply some configuration. It's all a part of the transport process that happens here. So now it's completed. We can see there was a problem here. That's just that we are missing a security credential, which we should be updating. So to make sure it works, we can see the messages that's being processed here and the iFlow. And everything in this virtual landscape, as much as possible, is virtualized. That means that, for instance, also the sender endpoint is configured to /QA, etc. So everything remains the same. for this process. And then once we have checked it, we can go back and we can create the ticket for the production. And this, we have the places. We can also do batch individual transport into QA, and then from QA we'll create a batch for batch transport once the project is released. So we don't need to create individual and multiple, but we can be more flexible depending on what you have. And then you have the transport overview page that enables you to show what the differences are and what is not transport and what you have values for. Cool. Then we get to the virtual thing, and that's for smaller customers that needs to have a QA and a governance system. This is really useful. A lot of customers, and I've also done that myself, is you will copy an iFlow, add a prefix or postfix to it. But the challenge is that once you have added /_QA to it, it becomes a little difficult to actually know which one you have actually made modifications to. And if a developer, while testing, just want to make a small modification, then it's done. And then the next time you're transporting from the development system, you forgot this small change, and then your QA governance is all a mess. And that's why the process about having this makes it easier. You can go in and you can block modifications to this, so it's only the FIGAF tool that can modify these artifacts now. Just note, we are normally recommending using prefix because it makes it easier to find the relevant iFlows that you have as a part of this. Documentation. I don't know a lot of people that enjoy creating documentation, but it is part of what is needed for working with the SAP integration. So we do create a lot of documentation. That's both on test cases, it is on changes, it is on iFlows, that all these things that just makes the process a little more challenging. So let's just see here some of the things that we can do. So if we are on an iFlow, we can go and we can create a scenario documentation. And we can open this, and in this scenario documentation we can see the history, we can see the name, the BPMN diagram, we can see the connections that's using, the test cases we have, flow description, all the configurations across the landscape, or landscapes, and we can see the different resources that has been added and when. Yeah, this was last updated. One of the things we can also do is, if we go into our ticket here, we can also see here a transport overview. In the report, we can generate a report, and this is also part of the documentation. So here we can use this if we want to document the changes that we have made. We have updated this iFlow to this iFlow with these versions. The test cases, the result of these test cases, what were the errors, so probably someone would have beaten with me with this. And then we can also see who approved it, and it was approved by me and imported by me. So we got all of this information that really makes it much more easy to document what's going on. And there's a few other reports we can generate, as you saw the BPMN diagram, the differences. We can also use the same process, just at looking at an update to see when something was changed. Monitoring. Yeah, so there's a few things that you obviously need to be able to monitor to understand what's going on and see who have made the correct modifications of your landscape once something is being processed correctly. So there's two things. One is you want to get notifications about alerts, and you want to be able to filter these alerts so you're only getting informed by correct messages, or when something is changed, and you want to be able to delegate some of this to other people, like you have a business partner that needs to be informed that they have sent you some data without proper details on, then you can see that that data. And you also want to know what has been processed on a given scenario. So let me just give you a good overview of this. So the best place to start is the statistics overview, and if you're coming from a PI world, you have probably seen this in the PI world. We've just also moved it here to Integration Suite, and one of the things that this does is it gives you the ability to actually drill in on some of these. We can from here also create it as a test case. So that's also a simple way to create it. If it isn't traced, we can see the custom headers, we can see all the payloads, we can see persist and data store entries. They're also shown here, just simplifying the process. And you can export all of this to a CSV and do further dig in here. And the idea with this flow was to give business user an ability to monitor the 3.5 iFlow that's important for them. So you can say for their procurement, they can update all the Ariba flow or whatever they would be using, and they can see what's going on, what kind of messages. They can export this, do manual consolidations if there is something that's going on, and obviously they can see the errors, etc. We also have an alerting tool that allows you to set up alerts and say, okay, we got a new message that's been processed here for some specific rule. We can create a rule about dealing with this and how do we handle this, so we can send an email to a specific person whenever this happens. And the idea is we can easily generate these rules. We normally will get recommended an XPath if it's a correctly handled iFlow here, so I can go in and create a new rule that comes up with an example example XPath rule that we can use to check these things. So that's the last part in the process, being able to monitor this thing. So obviously, questions, comments, put them into the chat. I'll try to cover those also. The last part is I started out saying Git was not really good. We also have our Git process, and the way we deal with this is more like a file share that enables you to, whenever FICAF sees that there's a change in an iFlow, it will update the Git repository with this iFlow, and then you have everything in this iFlow, both iFlow script collections, all the objects that we have. And then you have two places to actually edit these. So sometimes you want to correct a script and a Groovy script, etc. Then you can do it in this, or in this script editor. We also have some templates that allow you to upload back to CPI, etc. But obviously you need to figure out what is the correct way to work with it. I normally say this is part of the weight, and it is only for really pro developers that need to work on large Groovy scripts with multiple dependencies. There it makes a lot of sense. You can also create test cases. So there's a lot of good stuff in it, but wait with it. And now we come back to, I guess, one of the questions in the beginning. Do you want to build your own process? I know a lot of people that enjoy building cars. It's a lot of work. It's fun, rewarding. But there's also the people that, like me, just want to go out and start your car and just drive without having to consider all these small bits and pieces that is needed to make a car work. And that is the difference, as I see it, with building from scratch or building your own processes or using the FICAF process, where we have thought of all the things that you need. There's probably a few gaps, but there's APIs that will enable you to do all these integrations that you have, all the integration needs that you have to set up. We normally recommend newer customers to deploy FIGAF in BTP Cloud Foundry. It is by far the easiest process. It costs, now it says 400. I think we are 200 or 300 because you don't really need a large FIGAF instance in most cases. Obviously, it depends on your use case and number of users and how big of a landscape you have. But yeah, it's not really a big investment in that part. It's also fairly easy to deploy. It's just a Docker image, and we will monthly release new features, and then you just go in Cloud Foundry, deploy or push, and then it will update with a new image, and you have a new process and a new feature. For instance, this month we released the option to do user-defined function editing. So if you have Groovy scripts, those can be edited in user-defined functions in Groovy. They can be easily edited and run from inside of the tool. I hope you see some of the values that this can bring. So if you want to build your own process, just be aware it is going to take significantly or a large number of hours, and it is going to take longer time than you expect. Maybe it's going to cost you 20,000 euros to get started, and then it does obviously also you may need additional tools and platforms that you need to plug into this. For smaller clients, we have the virtual tenants that enable you to reuse QA or dev also for QA systems. We do see that there is some kind of a limit, and we normally recommend maximum if you have more than 300 interfaces. It's probably not ideal, but obviously it depends, and it is not a fixed limit, but it's more like what's actually the need. And obviously if you get to more than 500, you're anyway a big SAP integration customer, and then that justifies the full landscape. And anyway, the FIGAF tool then adds all the governance that you would need for such scenarios. One of the main drivers is obviously the productivity improvements, and it depends a lot of your specific use case, what you're up to. But it will save you like 10-30% a day, maybe even 40 if you're in a regulated industry and need to spend a lot of time on creating test cases, documenting these test cases, running them every day, etc. That's just quite easily way. We have different versions of FIGAF. The cheapest starts at like 100 euros a month, and then obviously you need to have the cloud credits to use the BTP in your own account. I do urge you to take action and try this out and see how it will work in your system. Spend the 4 hours it takes, and we'll just share this this link here in the Q&A. What you can then see in there, you can see a 4-hour video, no, 3 1-hour videos, one detailing how to install it, in the different versions that you install, how to connect it to CPI, how to connect it to PI, and then the other ones covers how to set up CPI Devops to handle these scenarios and work with it in a smoother way. There is a number of guides here, and then in this Devops you cover all of the things that we have done. How do you set it up? How do you run it? What's going on with these scenarios? We do have an offer. We don't normally do offers on webinars because it's a little strange things, but I do think it does make sense. Here we want to entice you to get started. So if you want, you can get access to the full Devops suite for 3 months. With up to 500 iFlows, and you never get to that level in the 3 months in most cases. and then you will get a really good understanding of how the tool works for your specific use case. It's 3,800 euros, which is the price of just 1 month for the full Devops suite for one organization, or up to 500 iFlows. We also have an onboarding package if you want our help to get you started with this. That's 5,000 euros, where we go and, well, where we do some sessions with you and cover the different steps that you need to go through in order for you to implement the tool successfully. It does require you have a fairly simple vendor onboarding processes where it's not too much work on for such a scenario. But yeah, I strongly urge you to go through the guide, set it up yourself. You should be able to get it running. And then if you have questions, ping me. I do hope that this would be a way for you to get started building some better processes to manage your SAP integrations.